Hey community, welcome back. And if this is your first time here, I'm Dr. Blaire, a doctor in clinical psychology, and on this channel we discuss psychology, inspiration, social justice, and all topics in between. First things first, hit that subscribe and bell button. I need to see you back next week, and of course, stay tuned because we are going to discuss a recap of the battlefield. Keep watching. All right, so before we jump into this, as you can see, we are doing something a little bit different this time. This time you will only hear audio. I will have some glimpses of stuff for you to look at on the screen, but feel free to go ahead and enjoy your commute and just listen in. Or if you need to just go ahead and clean up your kitchen or do some stuff around the house or continue to work on that document that you were doing, feel free to do that because this is for listening purposes and it is for a reason. Partly because I really want you to focus on actually imbibing or ingesting this information versus focusing on what you're seeing. And so, as many of you know, the Battlefield Conference is coming up this Saturday, November 5th, here in Chicago. I am incredibly excited to see all of those who have been registering, and I am so appreciative to all of those who have donated and sold into this. For those of you who don't know, the Battlefield Conference is focusing on pairing mental health principles along with biblical principles. We're going to be focusing on building on mental stamina, equipping the body of Christ with tools, with resources, knowledge, healing, and also deliverance and resources so we can maintain our deliverance. So we will have an abundance of panelists that's going to be coming to speak to us, a keynote speaker. We are going to have some workshops to focus on training as well as wellness vendors that will be on site. And so many of us are excited. We have been kind of prepping for you all over the past 2 weeks intensively, and we are incredibly excited to see you all relatively soon. And for any of you who have not registered and still wondering, is there still a chance for you to do so? Yes, absolutely. You can head over to www.drblaire.net/events/ and you will be able to purchase your all-inclusive ticket there. And lastly, if you arrive the day of and we still have space for you to register on site, you will be able to do that. However, I have been, really pushing for everybody to do that pre-registration so that you can get the full entire experience, as we may have limited supplies the day of if you come in and register at the door. We're going to be starting check-in at 9 a.m. and we will be getting started promptly right after we get everybody checked in. So please make sure that you're on time because this is an entire experience. It is designed to build on top of the previous session, and you don't want to miss any of the golden nuggets that will be shared. And of course, we're going to start at the top of the day with prayer and worship. And who wants to miss that? I know I feel that way every time I'm about to go to service. I don't want to miss praise and worship. But with that being said, we have done so much covering of material surrounding the battlefield since July. And I think it's important that even though we're getting ready to actually go into the battlefield, the conference, that we do a recap of everything that we've been doing and prepping here on YouTube. And so just to pause for a moment for those of you who are like, what is the battlefield? The battlefield is a reoccurring series here where myself or a community member will come on and discuss a battle that they have fought before or are currently fighting. And it encompasses either a mixture of personal and or professional battles. But at the end of the day, the battlefield is the place that we release, reclaim, and reestablish our justice for our mind, body, soul, spirit, and for our people. And I, Dr. Blaire, believe, as a believer in Christ, I believe that it is an injustice for the people of God to live outside of the alignment with God, with Christ. And when we live outside of the alignment, we experience more, do a whole lot of acknowledgement and honesty and realizing that the thing that I may have struggled with in the natural actually had a spiritual component to it. And when I was able to lock into that, I was recognizing what was going on in my life and how I had to overcome this fear of failure. And so I started off this month in July talking about my process of overcoming failure, in which I had to I had to actually acknowledge all of the components that contributed to that, and how it was a fear. And the moment that I had to address the fear was the thing that helped me to be freed from the agreements that I had made with that were actually opposing to God's will for my life. And when I overcame that, it helped me to step into a place where I was able to live in a greater light and truth. And so then, following myself, on came Lanita Kapler, who will also be at the conference. She's the CEO of Covenant Culture Network, and she came on and shared her own battle with imposter syndrome, in which some people may be wondering, like, what exactly is imposter syndrome? But it essentially is this negative voice, these beliefs, these thoughts and behavioral patterns that contribute to us feeling like you don't deserve to be in this space, and that you are an imposter in a particular space or area within your life. And so it actually robs us of being able to operate fully and flourish within a particular area in life. And it oftentimes is directly related to our identity. And as you all know, I'm speaking to believers now, your identity specifically within God. Imposter syndrome can then still do that even with your identity in God, in which it would make sense that the enemy will first attack your identity in God so that it does not transfer over into what we do in the natural. And so she shared her own story and her own battle. At that time in July, she mentioned and was transparent with us that she was still working to overcome some of these areas within this particular within this particular sector of her life. But I really, really appreciated how she shared what her journey is like. And for those of you who have not seen it, of course, you can head on over to my page and you will be able to listen to the details of that. That's about a 20-minute long video for you to listen or watch. And the following week, Miss Stephanie J, she came on representing the beauty industry, and she talked about how the beauty industry, according to wherever area in of the world that you're in, has all of these different standards. But at the end of the day, when you are a believer in Christ, when you are a lover of God, He sets what those standards are, and we can't go off of what the beauty industry says. Now, granted, she works in the beauty industry, but she doesn't allow that to lead, or those standards to lead how she operates in life, but instead to focus on the standards of what God has set for us. And so she just spoke to how she has been this change agent in that field, and really helping people, even her students that she taught, helping them to focus on the things that are most important, especially as they are getting ready to enter into this industry. And it helped to shed light on a lot of the corruption and poor standards that came out of this industry, and how essentially you have to be in that marketplace. You have to be in that space to make some of the types of changes that she's been making. And so kudos to her. She is also another speaker that will be joining us at the Battlefield Conference, speaking about some more of these things as it relates to the beauty industry. And so the following week, we had Ariane Rivers, who is the CEO of Journey to Eternal, come on and talk about her journey, specifically her purpose journey, and how certain mental health concerns came up for her, and how it directly attacked her feeling confident in her purpose for life. And so she has had moments in her journey where she's questioned, like, is this what God wants me to do? Is this what I'm supposed to do in life? And with all of these questions, she, as she asked questions or may have wavered, she realized how the enemy had a hand in that. And so how she had to kind of recenter herself in order to feel more confident and to be more deeply rooted in what God had planned for her in her life. And I just greatly appreciate all three of these guests who came on and shared their personal experiences, their professional experiences, and were vulnerable and transparent in that moment to not only shed light on what's going on for them, but with hopes and prayers that it would free any of you who are listening or watching in on that. So that was the month of July, where we came on and we talked about our personal experiences with the hopes to shed light for you. But then we kind of transitioned and changed it up in the month of August, where we talked about the weapons that we would need on the battlefield. So now at this point, this is where we actually are starting to talk about some tools, some specific information on what you could be doing to tackle some things on your battlefield. After you heard people in July talk about battles or the battlefield that they were on or have been on before, I thought it was important. The Lord revealed to me that you're going to need some weapons as you prepare to go onto the battlefield and fight. And so we talked about 4 different weaponry groups, so to speak. Started off the month of August talking about the weapon of courage. And listen, y'all, this one blessed me so much because David was ringing so much in my mind and life at that time. And with courage, the thing that the Lord showed me in reading about David was that he had courage at such a young age, and how courage was a number one weapon that he used, or a top weapon, I should say, that he used in his life in order to overcome many of the struggles and battles that he had to fight. Even at the young age, we all are familiar with this story with David and Goliath. That took courage in order to do. But even before he was in the light, even before he was getting a lot of attention from other people, even before God brought him to the forefront, he was able to have courage when he was doing the work with his natural father on his land. That is where he was able to build up that character. That is where he was able to take that trait that he worked on in the background when nobody was watching, when nobody could see him. And that was the very thing that helped push him forward out into the forefront. And the thing that actually God pointed out and said, you know what, I need to send someone to go anoint him because I want to call him to be king. It was the courage that put him in position to be king, not the fact that God pointed it out, but it was the fact that he was working on his character, and it was the character traits that equipped him to be in position to be king. And it's courage that we need as we prepare to go into the battlefield. We have to do it with courage. We can't do it while we shake it in our boots, because it's the very thing that will keep us shackled and bound in the places that we have been in for such a long time. With courage is the thing that helps us to take that one foot and step out on faith and move forward and say, you know what, I'm sick and tired of this pattern that I have been in. I'm so sick and tired of seeing life the way it has been. Yeah, life has been all right, but it could be even better. It can be even better. You can be in a place where you're not just surviving, but you are thriving. And some of the time we don't know that we're in a place where we are just surviving because we've just been doing that for so long. It has become our norm. It's become our everyday. But I challenge you to imagine a life where you are thriving. Imagine a life where you are thriving in multiple areas in life, and that you are not in a place where you continue to live life the way you're doing now. There are higher heights for you if you believe. And so then the following week, we talked about the weapon of honesty and integrity. And so this is, again, another character thing, but we cannot be on the battlefield without honesty and integrity, simply because there are things that happens on the battlefield that we have to be able to be honest about, even with ourselves and even with other people. We have to have integrity. And I know a lot of the time when we talk about integrity, we talk about it's doing the right thing when people are not looking. And that's not necessarily the full definition of that. In fact, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that video. It's about a less than 10 minute video to listen or watch. But we talked about how integrity and honesty plays a major role in your success on the battlefield. And it is the very thing that the enemy uses when we quote unquote do something wrong, where he tries to use that as an access point and a legal ground to be able to continue to attack us the way that he does. Honesty and integrity is not only a benefit for yourself, but it's even a benefit for the people that are on the battlefield with you, or that may be there alongside you. I'll talk about that in a moment. Honesty and integrity is needed in practically everything that we do in life. And so next, the following week, we talked about the weapon of rest. Now, I am a person who is accustomed to working for long periods of time. Some people may consider me to have been a workaholic at periods of my life, but the weapon of rest is actually something that's methodical and that we have to use at the right time. Timing is everything when it comes to rest. And in fact, we use it as a weapon because it gives us a moment to recharge. It gives us a moment to revitalize ourselves, to be rejuvenated, to be revived. When we press and press and press for too long, eventually we end up burning out. Eventually we end up tapping out. And in order for us to not burn out and tap out to a point where it's critical if you're burning out. But if we can have strategic moments where we stop, pause, and rest to rejuvenate ourselves, it actually becomes a weapon because we can turn around and use that time to reassess what we need to do on our battlefield, to evaluate, is this plan working the way we've been using it? Do I need to switch it up a little bit? And then you go forth and charge on the battlefield again. And so rest is, in fact, a weapon. I know we don't look at it in that way, but it is. Go ahead, check that out. That's about a 12-minute video for you to watch. And so with the weapon of allies and a coalition, I talked about the importance of having people and support out there with you. And so in this video, it's about a 10-minute video. It's a breakdown of the different type of allies and a coalition that you can have in different ways that they can play a role on your battlefield. And I know a lot of the time we secretly, in our secret places of our heart, feel like we have to do a lot of this by ourselves. Many of us feel like I don't have people, I don't have the right support to help me to do this. And so in this video, it's really challenging you to stretch your idea of what allies and a coalition looks like in your life. But believe it or not, but support comes in many different ways. Support may not always be them showing up the way that you want them to, but we have to be able to stretch our ideas and our minds and perspectives around what support and allies look like, simply so that you don't miss the benefit of somebody reaching out to help you. So that you don't miss the opportunity because you are instead trying to turn them away and reject the help because it didn't come in the form that you wanted to. I'm pausing because I want that to settle in. A coalition is a group of people that are fighting for the same fight as you. This may look like during an injustice where a group of people are fighting for what they are considering to be justice. They're all teaming up with one another to fight toward the same goal. But they may have different approaches in how they do it. They may do it from different vantage points. They may try from various different angles. But you're a coalition because you're working toward the same goal. That is also a community, actually, now that I think about it. Doing something in unity. The weapon of allies and a coalition was so good. You cannot do this by yourself. And if you feel like you have to do this by yourself, then that right there, I'd encourage you to pause and think about, evaluate what that is that makes you feel like you have to do it by yourself, which is actually a beautiful segue. Because the next month after that, I think we're in September at this point. In September, we talked about different areas that you can tackle on the battlefield. Now, this was so good because it's actually pointing out different things that people may be going through right now. And especially for those of you that are coming to the Battlefield Conference, consider bringing these items or these key points to the Battlefield Conference and thought about when we're talking about tools, when we're giving you training on how to address these things. Actually put that information to tackling these particular areas. And so we started off with tackling loneliness. So I just finished up talking about you can't do things alone. And when you do things alone, a lot of the time you may feel lonely. Tackle loneliness. Loneliness is it can spark up a lot of mental health concerns, whether that is anxiety, depression, some mood concerns, or even keeping you up in a place where you are isolated. It can attack your identity. There are so many things that the enemy uses when we are in a place where we feel lonely. And so in this video, not only did I highlight over, a little bit of 15 minutes, a little bit below 15 minutes actually, where we talked about different ways that you can tackle loneliness, but also how loneliness impacts your mental health, how loneliness impacts your spirituality. So go ahead and take a listen to that one if you feel like loneliness is an area that you are currently dealing with or have dealt with multiple times before in your life. If it has come up multiple times, it may be a pattern there. So just because you're not dealing with it now doesn't mean that you cannot attack it on the battlefield. And then the following week, tackle anxiety that destroys faith. My goodness, this one right here. If I if I knew how to do flips and cartwheels, I will. Because tackling anxiety that destroys your faith was so good for me. Anxiety, nervousness, fear, they are all related. They are all related, and they are used intentionally to destroy your faith. It is used to tear down your faith, that if I can keep you in a place, this is what the enemy says, if I can keep them, if I can keep her, if I can keep him in a place where they are fearful, where they feel too afraid to move forward on the thing that God told them to do, if they feel too afraid to come on out of the house, if they feel too afraid to live life, then I can destroy their faith. They will no longer believe all of the things that the word told them. It is a direct attack on your faith. And sometimes I have to tell people in that way, because it does something to you to realize, wait, you're doing this on purpose. This is intentional. This is not always about a me thing. And if it is a me thing, because there's a difference between an attack on your faith versus, dealing with natural fears, realize it is fueled by the same spirit. So we're not here to help you I'm not here to help you to manage it, but instead to get rid of it and build on your faith and strengthen your faith, expanding your faith, intensifying your faith, because we have faith, but we have to build on faith. It's almost like a muscle that we have to continue to work. It's like a muscle that we continue to build and strengthen and maintain. Yeah, tackle anxiety that destroys faith. And the following week after that, we had to talk about matters of the heart. And the following week after that, we had to talk about matters of the heart. So tackle your heart posture. And this is actually a topic that some of us may have heard before, but this is essentially examining what's in our heart. What is in our heart? What are we housing within our heart? Feelings, experiences, desires, emotions, reactions. Where is our heart in all of this? Because if our heart is in a place to not move forward, to stay where we are, then that is exactly what's going to happen. But if our heart is in a place to move forward, then it puts us in a position for our feet to move in the right direction. That when it goes one foot in front of the other, I'm headed in the direction that I desire. It all starts from our heart. So go ahead and listen to that one. I really love, I'm saying I loved all of these. Okay, I'm a little bit biased. I was involved in all of them, so... Yes, I do love all of this, but this is really important that we evaluate our heart, because if we don't evaluate our heart, then it makes it difficult for us to tackle loneliness. It makes it difficult for us to tackle anxiety that destroys faith. And then the following week, where we talked about tackling prolonged avoidance and quitting, it makes it difficult for us to do all of these things. And so let me talk about tackling prolonged avoidance and quitting. We all have moments where we avoid, and I think that a lot of time avoidance has a negative connotation, and I want to clear the misconception around that. Avoidance can actually be used in a healthy way. There are times that we need to avoid going into a particular situation or saying a certain thing, maybe we need to think on it a little bit longer. Maybe we need to make sure that it's what we want to say lines up with wisdom. There's nothing wrong with pausing and having some avoidance, but when it's prolonged and it turns into quitting, and is when it's now no longer helpful. And so tackle prolonged avoidance and quitting is absolutely something that you can bring to the battlefield, particularly because when we have avoided for too long of a time, you actually gave up. You actually gave up. You say, you know what? I'm not doing this. Forget about it. I am going to act like it's not there, which we actually talked about in the following month. But prolonged avoidance turns into quitting. And when you quit, when you give up, then you absolutely won't win that particular area. That area won you. And if you're sick of other things winning over you, then you have to go back and pick that up and no longer avoid it and face it and utilize all of these tools and all of this equipment that we've talked about in these videos and or that we will go over at the Battlefield Conference. We got to tackle prolonged avoidance and quitting and let it be no longer. It can no longer prevail over your life. If you say so, that's up to you. And so next, tackle toxic cancel culture. And listen, let me tell you, when this came up for me, I really went back and forth about how to talk about this because I didn't want people to feel like cancel culture is all bad. And for those of you who don't know what cancel culture is, it is a new term almost that's very similar to boycotting, but it oftentimes takes a lot of power or it has a lot of influence in the social media realm. And some of you all may not use social media as frequent as others, so you may not have heard of it. But there is a toxic component that has come along with cancel culture that really needs to stop. And so this is instead not focusing, it may be focusing on an individual level, but this is more at the community and culture level. And this is more of a macro level where we all really have to stop the toxic nature that has become intertwined into cancel culture, partly because cancel culture was really started with the idea of social justice, of standing up for something that is ethical. That you can disagree in a healthy way. I believe that you can, have an opposing thought from someone else and do it in a healthy manner where you do not attack that other person verbally. It doesn't have to turn into that. Now, granted, we have all had experiences, including myself, where we have done that incorrectly, where we have done it wrong, where we have partaked in some toxic behavior. But with that being said, when you do it, you have to learn from your mistakes. You have to learn how to do better moving forward. And I have seen people just trample over folks in the way that it no longer considers the fact that person may change. It is no longer considered the fact that it is a person that they are talking to, and people have become incredibly bold behind electronic devices and say things online that they are not willing to say in person, that they wouldn't dare open their mouths up and say in person, and that they wouldn't even want somebody saying to them. Toxic culture has turned into something that we really should not be tolerating any longer at all. And my hope is that people are not in denial about that, because the following month we talked about armor and defense mechanisms. Now, I know that some people may be familiar with defense mechanisms. Psychology would say that these are innate reactions and responses that we have to life experiences that may be positive or negative, but typically referring to negative life experiences. And with defense mechanisms, I really see this as armor. Now, of course, if we're going on a battlefield, we're getting ready to fight, we're preparing to fight, you're going to need something to protect you. With these actual 4 areas that I covered, it is instead focusing on how these innate responses, or even responses that we have been socialized to do, think it not strange. We have actually been socialized and trained socially to do many of these things. Because we may have seen other people do it and didn't even realize that we were picking up the trait. We were inheriting that trait and being cultivated to do the same thing. But with these 4 areas that were covered, denial, repression, projection. Let me say that again. Denial, repression, projection, and regression. With these 4 areas, they are armor, but there is a proper and improper way for us to use this armor. And you want to be sure that when you're going on the battlefield, that you are wearing the armor in the proper way that it is intended to be used. That is how you reap all of the benefits of it. In other words, if I go onto the battlefield and the battlefield is actually in water form, but instead of having on scuba diving gear or having water type of armory, I have on a bulletproof vest, it may not be as helpful as I need it to be. I hope that's clicking for some folks. We have to have the proper armor for the proper type of place and situation that we're in. And this is why we have to evaluate our defense mechanisms and the armor that we do wear so that we're using it appropriately. So, denial. Don't even know I'm lying. I am lying to yourself and even to others. Denial is quite dangerous. Repression is like sweeping things up under the rug. Or you may use the word suppression. It is out of sight, out of mind, that, you know what, I'll deal with it later, but you never go back. And the next thing you know, you got Mount Everest under your rug. And projection, literally, actually, how I am feeling on the inside, I'm going to put off onto other people and say that you are feeling this thing. These are all things that can be quite dangerous, and even regression. This concept that developmentally I go back in time and I start to regress or move backward in my response to a troubling or stressful situation, which actually speaks to maybe having difficulty managing that stress in a more healthy or in a stable way. And so go ahead and check all of those videos out there, anywhere between, say, about 11 to 18 minutes long, so to speak. But again, if you're coming to the battlefield, I know that that's a whole lot of videos to catch if you hadn't catched all of them. But it is, of course, up on here on the YouTube page. I encourage you to go ahead and listen to the ones that are related to you and share it with someone else. If you see something that another person may benefit from listening to, go ahead and share it to others with others. But with all of that being said, I said it at the beginning of this video. I'm going to say it again. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you at the Battlefield Conference on November 5th here in Chicago. And the information is going to be all on the website if you want more information in terms of what time does it start. We're going to start check-in at 9 a.m. We're planning to end around 5:30. But if you want to know anything about the speakers that will be there, I told you about a few. And then I mentioned earlier, I don't think I did, Ariane Rivers, the CEO, who was in one of the previous videos back in July. She will be on site as a wellness vendor, offering some of the services and products that Journey to Eternal provides. But with all of that being said, I'm looking forward to see you all there. There's still a chance for you to go ahead and register. And if you're not able to be on site, if you're busy on that day, please consider donating to a worthy cause. I take all of those donation tickets and I give it to a community member who is maybe not able to afford a ticket on their own. But this is a community in health intervention. We have to do something about our health, and we have to be more actively engaged in the process. So with all of that being said, go ahead, head over to www.drblaire.net/events/ and I hope to see you in the place on this Saturday. And lastly, before I go, King Stefan, who is a subscriber and listener here. Today is his birthday. Happy birthday. I pray that you have many, many more. And I am looking forward to seeing you there on Saturday, if you're able to make it into town. And with all that being said, y'all, you already know, like, comment, subscribe, and share with a community member. And be sure that you remember before you go. And I'll see you next time. If I'm great, and you're great, and we're a great community.